Thank you everyone so much for putting aside some time this morning to join us. We have a lot of really exciting current and upcoming features to showcase in today's webinar. I just want to also remind you that we'll be wrapping up today's webinar with a Q&A section at the end. Feel free to type in any questions that might come up throughout the presentation. So to get started, my name's Aiden. I handle marketing here at SEF, and today I'll be joined by our panelists, Manos Saratsis, who's the co-founder and head of product at Station A. I'll also be joined by our very own Joel Binstock, who does some excellent work in SCF's origination and acquisitions department. To start this off, I'm going to hand this over to Manos so that he can tell you a little bit more about what exactly we'll be covering in today's webinar.
Thank you, Aiden, and thanks for joining everybody. We're extremely excited on the Station A side to be launching this integration today. And this integration is really focused on improving and making more efficient the process of going from an address of a building to a solar PPA quote. So as we all know, getting a quote for a solar project has traditionally been a very slow and iterative process. It's highly dependent on building data. You have to talk to the building owner, get some information, or to be able to put together a proposal. But that's exactly the sort of pain point that we're targeting with this integration. So SCF's integration into Station A's platform enables you to automate your design to financing workflow and go from address to quote in a few clicks. So today we'll cover a number of different things, but the four main things will be how to identify the best solar projects in the Station A application. So we'll show you how to sign up for a free Station A account and sort of see all the powerful tools that we provide in order to go from a large region down to the best solar prospects. How to request market PPA quotes with no upfront building data from within the Station A application. And then I'll switch it over to Joel and the SCF team to show you how you can use their slick SCF suite interface to refine the solar PPA that you got from Station A, and then also to manage the project and drive it to execution within the Station A, within the SCF suite, excuse me. So with that, I'm just gonna switch over. So if you navigate to stationa.com today, you can read a little bit about our company. We are a software company that operates the first machine learning powered clean energy marketplace. And our goal is to connect clean energy buyers, installers, and financiers to execute projects more efficiently and more transparently. At the core of our marketplace, our technology analyzes the locational characteristics, business information, estimated electricity consumption, and local electricity costs at every building using state-of-the-art machine learning. And this enables us to do a number of interesting things. So on the clean energy buyer side, we are able to provide a transparent evaluation for any building tailored to the goals of the building owner. And it also empowers our users to make data-driven decisions and connect with project stakeholders online. We believe that this kind of digitization of the origination process is going to be central to the COVID and post-COVID world. So we give you the tools to get started doing that today. So our buyers, the buyers in our network, really enjoy using Station A because they can really quickly access a network of trusted clean energy providers. But for most of you today, the providers, Station A can also provide an extreme amount of value. So providers today use Station A to support every step of a clean energy project. So providers in our language are developers, financiers, or installers. You can use the Station A app today to do a number of different things. First off, to explore market trends, so to supply your geographic and project qualification criteria and see an analysis of the market that you're targeting, to find new projects, to sort of go down to the individual building level, analyze it, and sort of get all the data and functionality you need to drive project origination. And lastly, to connect with buyers. So you can actually, if you register as a provider in Station A, you can actually connect with our growing buyer network. We have buyers signing up directly for a Station A account, but we also recently launched an integration with Schneider Electric's Neo network, where we surface our project recommendations and our providers' quotes through their portal. So we have like a really rapidly expanding network of providers and buyers that work together to improve the process of originating projects. So our provider network today includes some of the biggest names in clean energy financing, construction, and development. And of course, from this list, sustainable capital finance is a big part of as well. So in order to get started with Station A, feel free to follow along right now, or you can do it at a later time. You can go to stationa.com and click on this button that says Login Sign Up on the upper right-hand side here. And you'll be prompted to log into Station A with your account. If you already have an account, even if your Station A trial has expired, you can still access 100% of the functionality I'll show today for free. I personally already have an account, so I can go ahead and sign in. And once I sign in, I'll see this dashboard page. It includes a quick survey to onboard me into the Station A marketplace. You can also see a number of updates that we post as we update our application. So we have a very kind of like regular new release cadence, and you can sort of like track what we're up to using our app. And also you can watch a number of tutorials to get up to speed. So again, if you hit the start tutorial button here, you can basically familiarize yourself with the app and make sure you have all the tools you need to get started with Station A. So with all the administrative stuff out of the way, I'm sort of like very excited to show you how this integration actually works. And again, what I'm going to show you today is 100% free and doesn't require credit card or subscription. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the upper left-hand side here to the Explore mode. This is our ever-expanding map of opportunities. We've mapped today about 1 million commercial and industrial buildings across the United States and the Ontario province of Canada. We target the commercial and industrial segment of the market. So the buildings that you'll see within Station A are over 10,000 square feet. So you can sort of like pan around the map here. As you'll see, it's like a highly responsive map. And just as an example, I'm just gonna zoom in and go to the metropolitan region here in Phoenix, Arizona. As you zoom in, you'll see substation locations, the geography of the grid, transmission lines. And then if you zoom even further in, you'll start seeing actual building footprints. So the buildings in blue are the ones that we have pre-qualified for you. And this is an ever-expanding data set. So we keep adding buildings and improve our data on existing buildings on a daily basis. One easy way to kind of like make sense of what you're seeing is to trigger a number of different visualization modes that we provide. So you can basically choose between solar potential, battery potential, annual peak and annual usage. As I said before, we have deployed machine learning technology to basically pre-estimate these metrics for each one of these buildings. And we also infuse our estimates with actual data from our provider network. So if I trigger solar potential, the buildings that you'll see in red are the ones that have the highest rooftop solar potential. And I can sort of like zoom even further in and see even more detail. So you'll notice the yellow boundaries of the parcels, the gray footprints of the surrounding buildings. And if I click on any one of these buildings now, I'm basically able to pull up what's called the Station A place card, which basically gives you all the structured data about this building. So, the address, the date it was last updated, and then all the information organized in tabs. So starting from the location data, how large is the roof area of the building, the number of stories, the height. We go to the local assessor's website and look at the parcel owner according to the assessor that you can see here, the assessor parcel number that's usually pretty useful when it comes to pulling permits, etc. And then also the administrative boundaries that the building falls within. So which postal code is it in, county, etc. Using this information and infusing it with information about the building's occupant, we're able to create an estimate for how this building uses electricity. So we look at estimated annual usage, estimated annual peak, and sort of like summarize it for you in this useful little graph. And then having the energy usage and the locational information, we are also able to provide a view into the estimated cost of electricity at that building. So this is a great way to go from just an address or just panning around the map into a specific building, look at the cost of electricity there, and then even pull up the link that describes the specific tariff for this building. So all this information culminates in what we call Station A quotes. These are our preliminary estimates for savings with different clean energy technologies, such as solar, battery, solar plus battery. You can basically see an estimate for the solar size that you can deploy at that location, and then a number of different useful tips that give you a sense for the parameters of the project. So this information, again, is accessible for every single one of the highlighted buildings. But for the sake of an example, let's say I'm an installer in Southern California, and I want to fly to the area of Irvine in Southern California. So I can hit this fly to button here, the purple one. I can type the words Irvine, California, and I can very quickly fly out to that area. Again, you can see in this specific region, we have all the building footprints mapped, but also we have the local utility circuits mapped as well. So, I can very easily pan around the map again, click on the buildings that I'm interested in, and dive a little deeper. But let's say, for the sake of an example, that I don't have the exact address, but I know there's a Walmart in Irvine. If I type Walmart Irvine, I'll be able to fly directly to that building, and even trigger the satellite view to see, what this building's roof looks like. But I can also go from this view to a specific address. So let's say I have a customer that is at 17684 Van Carmen Avenue in Irvine. With the autocomplete feature, I can very quickly hop to that address. I can see the building. It looks really good, pretty unobstructed roof. Click on it. And now I'm seeing this indicative 35% savings with solar. Again, I can see all the information we talked about before, including electricity costs, including estimated energy consumption. But now let's say I want to take a step further. If we qualified this building, it looks good, and I want to request a quote. So what I'll do is I'll go click on this request quotes button up here, and this will start a flow that asks me a number of questions about the building. So which clean energy solutions am I evaluating? The stationary marketplace supports all these solutions, but for the sake of an example today for the webinar, let's just choose solar. And I'm not the energy decision maker for this location. And again, we support a number of different financing options, but let's stick with PPA for now. I'm anticipating to kick off this project within the next 6 to 12 months, and there's nothing else that I want Station A to know. So I can submit this quote request here, and Station A will reply within an hour usually with my quote directly to my email, the email that I signed up for Station A with. And this is sort of like what this quote response will look like. So your Station A quote is here, the location of the project, the estimated solar size, the estimated all cash build cost, again, using no upfront information for the building, just purely based on Station A estimates. And just one thing to note, I can always click on this little link here and pull up the specific Station A place card on my screen if I need to. And then down here, you can see the specific quick PPA quote we get from SCF. So this is a great quote, an $8.6 cents per kilowatt hour. And this quote assumes a 20-year term and a 0% escalator. So if I'm interested in this quote now, I can hit this request PPA financing button, and Station A will basically guide me through the process of setting up my SCF account. And essentially, Station A will redirect me to this sign up page if I don't have an SCF account. And at this point, I'm just going to hand it over to Joel that's going to walk you guys through the SCF suite.
Awesome. Well, Manos, thank you very much. This is really exciting. It's really cool to see that machine learning coming into the solar space through a platform like Station A. So it's really exciting and shows what's to come. And we're very excited about this integration because to this point, commercial PPAs have lagged somewhat behind utility scale solar as well as residential solar. And so with the partnership with Station A, we're really excited to expand the volume of power purchase agreements that are completed in the commercial and industrial space. So let me just make sure everyone can see my screen. This is great, cool. So as Manos mentioned, Sustainable Capital Finance is a PPA provider. That's a power purchase agreement. That is an agreement where the customer provides no capital outlay. They do not own and operate the system, and a third-party owner, Sustainable Capital Finance in this case, owns and operates the system throughout the length of a PPA term and provides savings in the form of a PPA rate that will be under what they're currently paying with their utility. PPAs are not authorized in every state. It's a state-by-state specifics, and I can kind of help you and guide you depending on the market. So when you first log into the SCF suite, if you don't have an account already, you'll be greeted by this dashboard. This dashboard is there to kind of highlight all your projects that you've entered, your quick quotes, which is the API that's directly integrated with Station A. And you're able to see a lot of the projects that you entered. So let's go to the project that Manos kind of had ran in. And that's this manufacturing facility. And so I'm going to just guide you through how do you get from a project, essentially a quick quote, to ultimately to a project submitted for term sheet, and ultimately to contracts and energization. So on your first page, you'll see that there is a project details, off-taker details section. This will capture information from the customer, such as the authorized signatory, the title, the name, the address, location. All that information will be populated over from Station A. Moving on, your utility details. So the utility provider, the avoided costs, and your consumption. One thing to note about power purchase agreements is that we typically like to offset about 90% of historical energy consumption. And that's just to ensure that every kilowatt hour is going to be purchased under the PPA effectively. So, and you can also enter in an annual inflation rate. In this particular case, we're going to assume 3.5%. It widely varies across the country. And so you have certain markets where the utility inflation might only increase at 2%, others where it might be 5 or 7%. And we're able to help you with, identifying a proper inflation rate that we could, transparently communicate to the customer. Moving on to the next section is the schedule. And so this just helps SCF identify when you're anticipating your first milestone disbursement. And also there's a little bit of a time sensitive field that as we're approaching to end of year, you'll know that the ITC is stepping down with all plans, with the current administration being held equal. And so we can account for that. One thing to note is if you have modules that you've procured in 2020 that you want to utilize for a project, we're able to safe harbor and utilize the 2020 ITC. And so that could be very helpful for projects that you may have over allocated modules, or a project that fell out in your pipeline that you might have modules already allocated for. So that's just to help account for the ITC and the value add. So there's about a 4% D rate from this year to next year, and that's just something that you want to factor in when you're modeling projects. Now moving on to the project details section, this is going to be information pertaining to the actual system parameters. So this would be like your system size, your expected output, the production factor, you could break that down pretty easily, as well as the number of parcels. And for panels inverters, we use tier 1 for all of our suppliers. If you have an inverter or a panel that you want to utilize that isn't on this list, you could definitely share that information with us. We'll just verify through the spec sheets as well as the letter of warranty whether or not they're deemed as tier 1. We use also energy for all of our, essentially for our DAS, for all of our assets, and that just helps us monitor all of our systems across all the different states that we have our systems in an effective manner. Moving down to the cost breakdown, this is where you as a developer, as an installer, can modify and manipulate your total cost for the project, and that will directly impact the PPA rate. And so a higher cost per watt is going to lead to a higher PPA rate, and that can be calibrated through this calculate tool. One thing to note on the cost section is that there's two sections for utility interconnection as well as the ineligible bill cost, and these are non-ITC eligible costs. So for example, if you had a re-roof replacement or if you had a transformer upgrade on the utility side, those costs would be considered non-ITC eligible, and we just want to make sure that we're compliant with the IRS when we're deeming our tax basis. Moving on to the transaction and operating assumptions. For most behind the meter projects, this isn't really going to apply, except for the pilot or payment in lieu of taxes, if there is a pilot in that particular state. In this case, this is California, there is none. But for in front of the meter projects like community solar or a feed-in tariff, the property owner would therefore not be saving money on their energy bills. They would had to be kind of compensated accordingly, and we structure that through a land lease agreement. And at the bottom, you can see our financing terms. So Sustainable Capital Finance offers PPAs anywhere from 15 to 30 years. On average, our average term like this is typically 25 years. And then from an escalator, we go anywhere from a 0% or fixed rate PPA to a 2.5% escalator typically. Fixed rate PPAs can be very, very attractive for customers that are looking into to have easily identifiable allocated budget for their energy spend, especially over the years. But you'll have a higher base rate as a function of there being no escalator. And we can kind of play around, but it's pretty straightforward. If you adjust the escalator down to 1%, you can just hit calculate and you'll see what the corresponding PPA rate will affect. So let's go back to 2%, hit calculate, and then you can just see quickly about an 8.06 cent PPA. One thing to note is SEF worked really hard during kind of the first few months of COVID to identify a solution that could help customers in distress. And so we came up with the solar stimulus PPA, and there are 0 PPA payments in year 1 for that particular solution. So for a customer that is looking for kind of a balloon savings in year 1, the solar stimulus PPA provides an option for that. Essentially, that year's PPA revenue is spread over the remaining life of the term. So it's not a solution for everyone, but it can be an effective solution that you could always present to the customer. Local incentives, pretty straightforward. There are none in California, and there's no PBIs or performance-based incentives. But if you are in a state that has RECs, for example, New Jersey, which is a very attractive PPA market right now, you can toggle the TRECs, and that will provide the TREC strip that is in there. And we're always happy to work with you to identify all the project economics that are going into a PPA, whether it be the PPA revenue, the pilot taxes, rebates, incentives, RECs, etc. So we're going to work with you to help fully flush out the economics. Now, if you like the terms and you want to present them to the customer, one of the easiest ways is to create a PPA proposal. And I'll just pull one up right now. And so this is one populated for this particular project, but it's pretty straightforward. It's going to highlight a little bit about sustainable capital finance, as well as the PPA terms that we're presenting to the customer. Moving on to a lower section, you'll see a breakdown of the savings and all the information that's provided here. And then the bottom line savings figures. And then it really outlines an expected project timeline that you and the customer can kind of stick to and work towards. And if the customer is interested in seeing a term sheet, Sustainable Capital Finance is happy to set that up. We'll just move on to the next section. I'll explain a little bit more how you get there. So when you do request a term sheet, we typically request 2 kind of documents to help validate the project economics. So number 1 is an avoided cost analysis or 12 months of customer utility usage data. And that allows us to make sure that we're offering savings to the customer and that we could stand behind, right? And so we're going to look at the bills, identify the rate structure, and just make sure that the customer is going to see savings through the PPA. In addition, we will also request a preliminary design, and that's to verify the production that is going to be utilized to model the PPA. And so you could upload those documents here. It's pretty easy. And we can assign them, or you can assign them to respective folders, but this is really helpful for accessing your documents. If you're on site with the customer and you have your iPad out, you can pull this up, you can log into the suite and download any documents. And it's also helpful, particularly on certain files that are too big to be emailed back and forth. This helps to keep it pretty organized and accessible from different devices. Now moving on to the summary page, this is just going to highlight the PPA savings that the customer is going to see. So in year one, this theoretical customer is expected to see $146,000 of savings, and over the term, over $6.5 million. Now this is very, very significant for a lot of customers, right? And so we find that PPAs can be very, very attractive, particularly for customers that have a lot of energy spend, that are trying to go solar, but also don't want to put out the capital outlay to purchase and to own and operate a system. So through a power purchase agreement, Sustainable Capital Finance will own and operate and maintain, insure, and essentially the only billing that the customer will receive is once the system is energized, they will receive essentially after the first month, their first monthly PPA invoice. And that will offset the savings that they're seeing on the utility side. So you can see kind of a highlight of the project highlights over in the top right corner, and kind of what stage that the project is in. If the project economics aren't viable for the customer, or the customer decides to go down a different route, you can always close the project. And what closing the project does twofold is it keeps your dashboard clean, allows you to kind of keep track of which projects are live, but also what it does is provide Sustainable Capital Finance with the reasoning behind why this project didn't get financed through this PPA. And that helps us find, where there are certain inefficiencies, if it's in a specific market or in a specific demographic or utility range. We can help kind of address those inefficiencies in future updates and with different access to capital. And so it's always very helpful for us to kind of get visibility into why projects may not be financed through a PPA. So you could pick, the customer was unresponsive, or you lost to another financier, or we're not able to offer PPA terms under the avoided cost. In certain markets where the cost of power is very, very low, it may be very, very difficult to provide meaningful savings to a customer. If the project is a viable project for both the customer and also meeting your margins and your expectations with regards to a project cost, you can request a term sheet. And what requesting a term sheet will do is you just have to populate a few additional variables, but it'll notify your SCF analyst to essentially review all the information that you've posted in the off-taker info tab, as well as the project details, and really validate the PPA terms that we're proposing to the customer. At this time, or even prior, we're happy to get on a call with the customer directly, or if you want to set up a three-way Zoom, we're also able to do that as well. And that just helps us get familiar with the customer and helps them get familiar with Sustainable Capital Finance. At that point, we'll typically request 3 years of audited financials from the customer, and that's just to support and diligence and underwrite the customer and make sure that they're going to be able to pay their power purchase agreement throughout the length of the term. And once you request that term sheet, we typically will generate it within 48 hours, which is pretty quick turnaround time from all the way from that quote in Station A all the way through project submission and term sheet. And with that, I believe we're going to transition back to Aiden. Aiden, you good?
Excellent, thank you, Joel. Yeah, so that's basically an overview of the entire pipeline from, searching out those, appropriate rooftops with Station A to, completing the project and generating a term sheet through SEF. So now we're going to go ahead and just jump forward here and talk about some of the next steps that SCF and Station A are looking at over the next couple months. So Manas, you want to walk us through this real quick?
Yeah, happy to. And let me just also echo that Joel, this the SCF suite looks really slick, and it's like an extremely nice user experience. We really think that this is a game-changing integration. I mean, any solar installer in the country can evaluate projects and request PPA quotes for zero cost, right? $0. No subscription required for either Station A or SCF. This, we believe, has the potential to drastically reduce origination costs, help installers of all sizes scale their project pipeline, and do it all digitally with minimal effort. We really think that's a game changer for the industry. This, however, is just the first step in our journey with SCF. Our aim is to fully automate the solar project origination process, and we're already working on a number of different features within the Station A app that we're extremely excited about. One feature that a lot of users are asking for is this notion of customizing a project from within Station A. So the ability to edit the parameters of a project, such as the roof coverage ratio, the panel tilt, the panel type, and sort of like getting this SCF quick quote update in real time. We think that this real-time feedback loop would really help and shorten the origination time even further. Now, in the industry, we've seen a lot of tools that I'm sure a lot of you guys use that do building by building analyses. You zoom into a building, you type in information, and you basically get a quote. We think that one of the differentiating things about Station A is the fact that you can finally do this at scale. So instead of looking at individual buildings, you can now look at multiple buildings all at once. And that's specifically very useful when you're looking at building portfolios or university campuses, any kind of like entity that actually occupies multiple buildings. So one of the features we're working on is this notion of requesting batch quotes. So essentially requesting quotes for multiple locations just with a single click. Station A also provides you powerful tools to go from a portfolio of thousands of locations down to the 10 most profitable locations and only request quotes for them as well. And lastly, we're working on integrating more technology options. We've seen building owners getting way more savvy. We've seen technology maturing very quickly. So we want to integrate more clean energy technology quotes. One of the questions that I'm already seeing is, ground-mounted projects, carport solar, EV charging infrastructure. These are all kinds of projects that we don't currently support, but we are going to be supporting within the next year, leveraging the exact same workflow that we laid out. So again, super exciting, just the first step. And I definitely invite all of you to sign up for Station A, follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn, and get started with automating your project pipeline today.
Thank you, Manos. Yeah, it's really exciting how much of this is free and accessible to everyone. Yeah, so that about wraps up our main presentation. I'm going to go ahead and jump into our Q&A section. And now would be a great time if you have any questions that just came up or you've been sitting on to go ahead and type those in. I believe we've got a couple all ready to go. Joel, would you mind kicking that off?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a good question for Manos. So how close to the roof or ground can you zoom in? And then specifically, can you target ground mount solar projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can actually get really close to the point where you can identify, the buildings, the rooftop obstructions. So feel free to try it out by yourself. If you trigger that satellite view that I showed earlier, you can get to like a very, very high zoom level. In terms of ground mount projects, we don't currently support them. We have the shape of the parcel and the shape of the building footprint encoded within the app. So it would be an easy lift to do that. And it's actually one of the types of projects that we want to start supporting very soon. Right now, we do focus on the rooftop side of the equation.
Awesome, Manos. And from Sustainable Capital Finance's perspective, we can absolutely support ground mounts, fixed rooftops, or carports, or a combination. If you have a multi installation project, we're absolutely able to support that. And that can be factored in as well on the quick quote directly within the SCF suite. Does SCF only offer PPAs, or do you also finance? So that's a great question. We exclusively provide PPAs or lease agreements. We do not provide a kind of debt capital as a portion of the capital stack. Next question. Can I request PPA quotes for residential buildings or anything smaller than 10,000 square feet? Manos?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, we focus our platform in the commercial and industrial side of the market. So, we look at buildings that are over 10,000 square feet, but we're actually working on new features that would enable you to click on any building on our map and request a quote. And, we believe that we can actually scale the same workflow for smaller buildings, residential buildings, and kind of like the full kind of like range of building types. So today you can't do it. However, it's something that we're working on actively, and you should be able to do it pretty soon.
Okay, and for sustainable capital finances perspective, the minimum system size for a single site, for a single project is 100 kilowatts. Although we do recommend, particularly with the ITC step down, that it's going to be closer to 250 kilowatts. And from a savings perspective, larger systems and larger installations will lead to ultimately larger and bigger dollar figure savings that you could present to the customer. So a megawatt system is going to have 10x the savings as a 100 kilowatt system. And okay, next question. Are clean energy buyers using Station A, and how can I put my EPC quotes in front of them?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we have a growing number of clean energy buyers using our platform. We try to make our platform equally accessible to the provider side, to the professionals in the industry, and to buyers of all sizes. So we have anywhere from like a single building owner looking for like a rooftop solar project, all the way to like large corporate buyers with hundreds or even thousands of buildings across the country using Station A to get quotes for solar and battery. So if you are a provider and you want to join the Station A marketplace and start putting your EPC quotes in front of this buyer audience, feel free to sign up for Station A and take our marketplace onboarding survey that I showed in the dashboard, or even contact us directly at support@stationa.com, and we can help you get started.
Great. What states are the best for power purchase agreements? That's a great question. So California is still the most sophisticated power purchase agreement market in the country. The interconnection processes with the major IOUs are relatively seamless, emphasis on relatively. So California, Arizona under a solar services agreement, or SSA, and then New Jersey, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Ohio, Pennsylvania are all very good markets for power purchase agreements. Anywhere where the cost of power is relatively high, good irradiance, good access to interconnection, and low barriers to entry on the interconnection and permitting side always helps. And as mentioned, projects that have larger system sizes are going to generate more savings and more PPA savings. But you also have to be mindful of net metering restrictions and caps. So you can always go to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, and kind of identify on a state-by-state basis the different net metering requirements, in local incentives, et cetera. So that's a good resource to help identify whether or not a market is feasible for power purchase agreements. Next question. If I have a spreadsheet of customer addresses, can I import it to Station A and request PPA quotes for all of them?
Yeah, that's also one of our most used features today in Station A, actually. You can basically take any spreadsheet of addresses, upload it into Station A, match it with our sort of like building database, and then request quotes on the best buildings within that list. So it's definitely a feature that is very much leveraged today from our users, and it's especially useful if you are an installer that has an existing customer book, entities that you've already worked with, and you want to potentially import them and analyze them further for even for projects beyond solar. So we provide a lot of easy ways to enter the Station A world with your data and quickly go through the same sort of like process of procuring quotes. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out at support@stationa.com if you have any extra questions, but this is definitely one of our most popular features.
Well, that's great. Let's see. Some of these questions have already been answered. Oh, how accurate is the Station A solar estimate, Manos?
Yeah, we see the Station A solar estimates as definitely accurate enough to get an indicative solar quote. We basically, use the actual shape of the building derived from satellite imagery. We estimate the obstruction level. We sort of like look at all the parameters that we can infer about the building. And our providers tell us that the Station A solar estimate is great in basically getting an initial quote, but also pretty useful when it comes to going from 1,000 or 100 potential buildings down to the 5 or 10 best targets. So, we view ourselves as this sort of like top of the funnel qualification step where, you can basically get your quick quotes, get a sense for what works. And then, of course, downstream, you can use other industry tools or solar helioscope, et cetera, to refine your design. But we think that, you are like Station A is the first step in this process. Your kind of like first attempt at defining what your market looks like.
So with that, from Sustainable Capital Finance, we want to thank you very much for participating, and I'll kind of let Manos chime in here.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. Thank you, Aiden, for organizing, and thanks for attending, everyone. We're very excited to be giving you the tools to really scale your solar pipeline today.